Hey there, everybody. This one's going to be a bit of a tough video for me. So I've been trying to do this 0-hour deck profile and gameplay video for Hange Zoe for a hot minute now. And while I am satisfied with where I've got the deck for the moment, talking about Hange Zoe seems, to put it bluntly, like a lot of cope. I used to think that this character was incredibly underrated. Just because, well, we'll talk about the abilities a little bit more in a minute, but I have come to the conclusion that this might actually be the most unfortunate character in the Attack on Titan Battle for Humanity. So, I recorded the whole gameplay video, I recorded the deck profile, and I didn't like it. You know, something about it just didn't seem right. I might still upload it. I might redo it completely. I might find some new life for this deck. But the whole time, there's just something gnawing at the back of my mind that what I was presenting wasn't right. But first, I want to talk about all the reasons to love Hange. As a character in universes, there is a lot to really enjoy and a lot to really like. So they bring the new card type backups to the forefront of gameplay. You start with one immediately. When you build your deck, it's something that you're going to have pretty much, right? Be weird if the Hange deck just had no backups in it at all, but you know, we get to immediately take one of the common or uncommon 4-diff backups and put them immediately into play. Using backups to pass a check on the very first turn of the game has crazy potential, and that is the number one factor why I thought maybe that this character could be really underrated. That's an ability that definitely in previous formats would have garnered a lot of attention. And then it negates the primary downside of backups being attacked. So the number one thing I hear from people a lot with backups is, as much as they like a backup's ability, the fact that they shift down and then the rival has the opportunity to attack them, and more importantly, to get damage triggers off of them, is kind of a big downside. I know that the Jaw Titan shifted side is kind of a Ymir Jaw Titan counter, right? Where you shut off all the life gain that you can do for the turn and cancel the ability. But on the flip side, Ymir decks are playing some of the best on damage triggers, right? Some of the best on hit effects with Tetra Terra. I know that some have been playing Tasty Riff. The symbol itself is chock full of them, right? Life symbol has some of the best if this attack deals damage abilities. So Ymir has been eating up Jaw Titans by just playing, Spirit Gun Mega and things like that. Like, I'll gladly draw my cards or hitting you, get the momentum, things like that. So negating that downside was something else that I thought, oh, this is kind of a big deal. Unfortunately, I don't think it's quite enough. So we've got where Hange misses the mark, in my opinion. Number one is the lack of a backup to build around. Backups that we got aren't super impressive. They don't jump out at you. I do think that when you start with one in play, right? I think it's the medium Titan where you get +2 damage, and then if your rival has 10 foundations or more, it gets +2 speed as well. And if I have a card that commits for 2 speed and 2 damage, and I start the game with it in play, that doesn't sound too bad. The backups don't look very good when you play them for a 4 difficulty, or if you tried to compare them to a 4 difficulty foundation. It's really kind of interesting where I don't know if it's because you can't flip them and target them with commit effects that they seem to be more safe than a foundation and an asset. But there's also cards in the set that just immediately destroy. I don't know. But Hange doesn't get to protect the backups that players actually want to attack. They get to protect the 4 difficulty ones that I struggle to find anyone besides cheesing a damage trigger, right? Besides just saying, I need this on hit effect. I don't think anyone's going to really want to get rid of your ability to give plus or -1 damage on a commit. Especially when offensively, that's a card that you could be committing to pass a check and still get that benefit, right? Also, the weirdest thing is Hanji misses out on the best backup support cards. There's definitely some good ones on the life symbol, but there's almost none on the fire symbol. And all the best ones seem to be Chaos and Death. Chaos seems to have the cards that Hanji really wants, and maybe there's some balance implications there, but it's very weird that Hanji lacks any real identity or synergy with the fire symbol. The fire symbol in this set is really all about milling yourself if you've cycled type effects. There's some sacrificing themes going on, and Hanji doesn't play well with any of them. Hanji doesn't particularly benefit from sacrificing foundations. We'll talk a little bit more about where the ramping up foundations kind of misses the mark too in a weird way, but the going through the fire symbol, there's only like one card with Hanji even in the art, and it's just a -2 speed, 1 difficulty foundation. There's almost nothing to do that benefits from Titan cards. I think there's like activating the coordinate that deals damage to all the backups. It's like a massive backup attack. So like there's cards that kill Titans, but not cards that help you have Titan. And I just think that that's kind of weird. And I think the worst part, and probably the one that most people would jump to when thinking about Hanji, is that they are strictly outclassed in almost every way by the other backup-oriented characters. Even Beast Titan, who's not super popular, can draw a whole lot of cards by building these backups. And there's multiple backups that build when you block with them. So there's different ways to ramp that immediate resource for Hanji, which is kind of neat. But when the Beast Titan gets to get the backup and draw a card, there's definitely some comparisons to be made. The Beast Titan does have some really explosive turns where you get to ramp a backup and it draws you a card because you built it, and you get to immediately activate it. So I feel like Beast Titan actually has more explosive turns. He struggles in a lot of the same ways that Hanji does, but I do think that the Beast Titan has more synergy with specifically the backups and the shift attacks. Maybe not necessarily the ability to play them, right? The ability to play these high difficulty attacks as a 5-hander is pretty tough, and Hanji beats him in that leaps and bounds. So that's pretty cool. But then we look at Ymir, and Ymir gets to build down a foundation every turn faster. So that is a type of ramp. It's not free, right? It's not something that you started the game with, but going second, you do get to clear that card pool. You do get to reduce difficulty while getting the resource for your build turn. That's a big deal. And then I think the most curious thing is when Ymir transforms, they give +2 speed to every attack. They don't have to commit a resource for it. It doesn't have to be committed at a weird time. And I think that's one of the hardest parts for me to come to terms with is a Hanji has to check poorly or play overly bloated difficulty cards. And that makes sense for the set that it's in. But it is kind of sad when maybe you do want to play some 4 diffs, but they need those stats, and Ymir just gives it to everything. Ymir gives the same speed as a continuous ability without having to invest any additional resources. You don't have to lose anything. It's just always there. And on top of that, Ymir has some of the best damage pump in the set. Combine that with a gimmick that increases your life total and having more cards than Hanji to draw in a turn anyways. And it's pretty likely that you'll have to deal at least 31 damage to a Ymir over the course of a game. And then on top of that, they also get the higher hand size and more stats. And it's all kind of falling apart. And that's to not even mention Smiling Titan, who is the other 6-hander, who has the life symbol, who cares about high difficulty attacks. And they're not necessarily married to backups and shift attacks, right? They don't have to have backups in their stage to get their stats at all. They don't necessarily have to check poorly. But when you get a whole bunch of check bonuses to play these big attacks, it only benefits the Smiling Titan. And I'm not gonna lie, once or twice I've checked a 6 when I really needed to check a 5 in Hanji, or I have too much of a check bonus going. It's just hard to fit those dials. It feels really bad when you have too much of a good thing going on and it's not actually a good thing anymore. So Smiling Titan just completely outclasses Hanji stat-wise. And then on top of that, similar to Ymir, the readying of the Smiling Titan acts as an additional resource every turn, right? It's like a very intentional, you commit the Smiling Titan, their playable wall, committed, their tenacious ability, and then when they deal damage, they get to ready themselves. And they can also do that on the rival's turn. So while you partial block, while you block one attack, commit Smiling Titan, and then want to block another attack after taking 6 damage, you can ready Smiling Titan and get that on both turns. So Hanji gets 1 at the start of the game, which again is super powerful, but it's kind of eclipsed as soon as Smiling Titan uses their response twice, especially if they use their response on a full turn cycle, right, on both turns. So the other life, again, the fire characters, there's no real similarities. There's no real shared gimmick. Hanji doesn't cycle. Hanji doesn't sacrifice foundations. Doesn't even benefit from like discarding cards, like sacrifice for the cause. There's really not a lot going on there. And then life symbol, it seems like every other character just does what Hanji does better, including the resource game, including the stats game, including playing high difficulty attacks. So the hope that I have for Hanji's future is pretty simple. These are all things that are very, very possible, right? So every Attack on Titan set will probably have a 4 difficulty backup on Hanji symbols. I'm going to knock on wood when I say that, but I think that that's a very good possibility, and it won't take much for a worthwhile backup to give Hanji a more impressive gimmick. Again, anything that you can build around at the start of the deck building process will definitely be interesting and breathe some life into this character. I think that there's a lot to explore with being a researcher, right? Collecting data, and the passion that Hanji has for Titans is also something that I think maybe will get represented a bit more as we progress through the arcs and we get more Attack on Titan art onto the cards, a bit more of the story to tell, right? And then future versions of Hanji will probably still be interested in Titan and backup cards, which will give more support as long as they share at least one symbol. And again, you'd have to assume it's the life symbol because that's got the best Titan support for the character. But these are all things that are very likely to happen, at least in some capacity. I don't know if they're going to move mountains for Hanji, but these are definitely things that I hope pan out. I hope that there is a more interesting, a more pivotal 4 difficulty backup that you can kind of base the deck around, or at least would warrant a response from the opponent, right? Because again, these Titan backups are still vulnerable to Nape Strike, right? You can't attack them, but you can destroy them in other ways. You got to be a little bit careful if you build your whole deck around something that gets removed by, was it 2 difficulty action, 1 difficulty? Not difficult, right? Not a difficult card to play. So, I think that there is already that check and balance that came in the first Attack on Titan set. I'm not super worried about the balance implications of printing better backups for Hanji, but why it might be for the best is that while Smiling Titan and Ymir arguably have more resource ramp, they occur more naturally during gameplay. They don't happen before the game begins. It's not available on the first turn. It doesn't necessarily warp their ability to build foundations on turn 1, right? That turn 1 build being super duper important, especially with a high difficulty centric attack lineup. The sooner you can guarantee that you pass the check to play a card like Ravages of War, or the female Titan attacks, or the Colossus Titan attacks, things like that, then the better your game plan is going to be, right? notably the Beast Titan's Call is an 8 difficulty move. So realistically, if the lowest check in your deck is a 4, you got to build at least 4 foundations, right? At least 4 cards, and putting that free resource into play might be kind of a big deal. And that's, I think, where you kind of have to focus like Hanji's power level at, is how much can I utilize starting the game with just a card that commits to help me pass a check. Whereas Ymir gets normal foundations, right? Foundations that can be responded to. There's a fair amount of cards that respond to the rival building a foundation. We don't see them too much because they are still kind of niche strategies, but they are common abilities in the format. So learning the standards, I think it flips itself to flip something that you just built. There's definitely like a 1 difficulty foundation that's doing some nasty stuff. We've had, oh God, what's that stain card? There's a stain card that will like remove it from the game, right? So Ymir has always had some more, I guess, normal counterplay involved. And Smiling Titan, of course, is a just block character. If you just block, then they don't get to ready, they don't get that resource back, and you're doing what you're supposed to do during normal gameplay. And then negating the built-in counterplay of backups, being able to be like attack targets, it could be troublesome. If you do print something that's, you know, so good that your opponent has to be playing a really specific answer, I don't think that that's something people like. If there is a 4 difficulty backup that is super cranked, it makes Hanji like the best character in the game. It'll probably be at the expense of some interactivity. It'll probably be warping around whatever symbols get to play Nape Strike, you know, things like that. So I can understand where the need for caution might come in. Because again, I was stoked when I was like, oh, I get to start the game with a free resource. That's got to be busted, right? But the fact of the matter is that playing other characters, especially on Hanji symbols, it's been easier to get that resource in other ways. It's been easier to get those resources through more successful strategies. And all in all, I really want to fool around with the full capabilities of this new card type, but with only like 9 backup options to choose from, only 2 of them are really, you know, Hanji cards. I've just been kind of saddened by the potential that an ability like this has. You know, again, the potential of starting the game with an extra resource, having super greedy, tight-knit early build turns, playing lots of high difficulty foundations, you know, potentially high difficulty backups. I want to play a backup on a 4 and have it feel worth being a 4 difficulty, right? Not just the ones that Hanji gets to play for free at the start of the game. These are all things I want to fool around with, and I want to have some meat on their bones, but right now it's plus or minus 1 speed, right? It's just plus 2 damage, sometimes plus 2 speed. The shift attacks are like half deadlock effects. The other halves are just like flip 1. I mean, they're not super duper impactful on their face, and so without the stats behind them, without, you know, a reoccurring resource ramp, right? Like, even if you look at Reiner, like, who's the inverse, where he's ruining things, and you've got the Eren Jaegers who are sacrificing foundations to ruin foundations, they're interacting with this ability to play high difficulty cards much better than just having 1 additional card you can start the game to commit with. So, I don't know. This is getting a little rambly, of course, but these are just my thoughts on Hanji. I thought the character was very, very cool in the manga. I thought that the reveal for Hanji was like, this character is going to be sick. I know that they're going to make a huge splash with backups, and this is the backup focused character, and Mimic's really strong, right? People really like Mimic, but Mimic has better stat adjustments. It happens a little more naturally during gameplay, and of course Mimic gets to tutor and attack every turn, so that's pretty crazy. Whereas Hanji gets plus 2 speed only sometimes. And usually the backup card that you're committing to pass the check just loses 1 stamina for 2 speed anyways. I think that's right. I think every shift attack is lose 1 stamina, for +2 speed or +2 damage, except Armored Titan might be -2. There might be a -2 speed. For Armored Titan's -2 damage. So like all of these tiny little minor stats are just kind of what they already did. So I don't know. This is the character who I felt like had the most potential, both reading the reveal of the character, before we had the full set, before we knew that there's only going to be 2 backups, targets, only 2 4 difficulty backups. But also when I read the manga, this was the character that might have stuck with me the most, had maybe the most relatable arc from start to finish. I don't want to throw spoilers for a 10-year-old anime out there, but this is the character that stuck with me the most, and I don't know. There's still a lot of potential to be had. So maybe in the future, Hanji will get some love, and this is me putting those vibes out into the universe. If you want to put vibes out into the universe, you can hit like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. It helps me out. And I really do live for the likes. I really do going on to YouTube and seeing that the like ratio is still at 100%. So if you do like the video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one pretty soon.